All set?
Gotta let everybody in. Cool. Terrific. We can get started.
All right, welcome to the May 8th, 2025 Connecticut Paid Leave Board of Directors meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order. It is 9:02 a.m. Stephanie, can you take attendance, please?
Yes, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Ava Bermudez Zimmerman,
Present.
thank you. Lisa Canada,
Present.
good morning. Adrian Cochran. Nothing. Adrian has joined us.
I don't see Adrian.
Sheila Hummel,
Present. Good morning.
good morning, Sheila. Ellen McKitterick,
Present.
good morning. Eleanor Michael,
Present, good morning.
good morning. David Salazar Austin,
Present.
thank you, good morning. John Scott,
I'm here.
thank you. Mike Soltis,
Present.
Molly Weston Williamson,
Don't see Molly.
good morning. Okay. Holly Williams,
Present.
Renee Woods Weber will not be joining us today. Justin Zartman,
Present.
thank you. And we do have a quorum.
Just point of order, Andrea Comer, I'm here.
Good morning, Andrea.
All right, and I'd like to thank the members of the public for joining us this morning. Do we have any members of the legislature in attendance?
We do not have any legislators here, but Melissa Gibran is a guest.
Okay, great. Okay, to kick us off, I'd like to ask for a review of the April 10th, 2025 meeting minutes. Are there any corrections or discussion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
All right, a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Any abstentions? All right, the motion carries. Next item, Dave, would you please lead us in a discussion regarding the proposed fiscal year 2025-2026 budget?
Certainly will do. First, I'd just like to say good morning to Molly. I think she snuck in while we were taking roll, so I just want to acknowledge that that you were here. So good morning, everybody. It is that time of year again when we prepare a budget at the authority and go over it both with the Finance Committee, which we had already done, and with the Board of Directors, which is what we are going to do this morning. So I'm going to share my screen and we will get started.
See your screen, Dave.
Thank you very much. Okay. Let's make this a little bigger. Okay, so this budget will be for the coming fiscal year, which is from July 2025 to June 2026. For those of you who may be somewhat new to the process, there are three aspects of the budget that we prepare. There's the operating budget, which covers the operating funds of the authority, so it can run and function. There's the bond budget, which we use for system builds for things like the contribution system, including fund recovery and other similar and necessary enhancements to existing systems. And then there's the contribution budget, which covers obviously the contribution money coming in and the benefit money going out, and helps us in determining what the fund balance will be at the end of any given fiscal year. So we'll start off with the operating budget. The operating revenue for this year is budgeted at $16.7 million, and I'll get into the assumptions behind these numbers in a couple of minutes, but we'll just start with what the numbers are. So the revenue is $16.7 million, and that consists of money for the administrative fee that is paid to the Paid Leave Authority, and a smaller portion of that are fund recovery penalties that we get from employers for late and or incomplete filing. Expenses are budgeted at just under $16.9 million. And so the significant expenses of the authority, which probably won't come as too much of a surprise to anybody who listens to my financial summaries every month, are salaries and the related benefit expenses, fringe benefits, and pension expense. There's the contact center that provides employer support. There's also outside IT support for maintenance and similar work for our platforms. There's outreach engagement work that Jess updates us all on regularly. And that also includes our new Community Education Coordinator Initiative, which we abbreviate as CECI. There's also grievance adjudication work that our partners at DOL do, which is appeals that benefit claimants may make if they feel that the decision was not made correctly. And then there's software licenses that we pay for the various platforms we have, including Salesforce, which is what the employer contribution system rests on. There's ForgeRock, which is what employers can sign on to for the one state sign-on that the state uses. There's Blackthorn, which helps us take in the payments. So all sorts of software licenses like that. Those are just the brief highlights. In the middle, you'll also see there's a carry forward from operating reserves. And why is that there? Well, the expenses are slightly higher than the revenue, but we do have money in operating reserves right now. So we're carrying forward a portion of that so that the net activity for the budget is 0. And so it evens out at the end of the year. There's also other money that will be left over in the operating reserves because it is accumulated in about the 4 years that the authority's been in existence. And that's about $14.4 million. So the plan is to put that money back into the contribution fund where it can earn interest. So we would redesignate the money from the operating reserves to the contribution fund. That amount is about $14.2 million. And again, it's about 160,000 shy of the opening balance because we're leaving that for the next year's budget. We haven't done that in the past, but it makes sense to do it now because it's similar to what the state does is at its level, because if there's any unused funds in an agency's budget, that money effectively gets returned to the general fund by the end of the fiscal year. So we're following suit with that, and we're going to put the money back, start off with a 0 balance, and earn some interest on the money. Let's talk a couple of minutes about the why behind the numbers. The revenue, the administrative fee is $16 million. That jives with approximately how much we think the expenses are going to be for the authority. So that's where the fee comes from. Historically, we have budgeted $20 million, but we've never used the $20 million. We transfer about $5 million a quarter, and there's always one quarter where we don't transfer the $5 million, so we don't need it. So we're ratcheting down the administrative fee this year based on our historical trends. Speaking of historical trends, that's what we use to budget the fund recovery penalty money, as we've had about 18 months of history now due to our fund recovery efforts. So we were able to budget a dollar amount of that to the tune of about $700,000. Moving on to expenses, the significant assumptions there. Our salary and related expenses are one of our more significant expenses. So we have budgeted salary adjustments for that, 2.5% in July and 3% in January. One is for a cost of living adjustment, and the other is for the other regular increase that the state's current contract has allowed for with CBAC. Now, that
I'm
contract, hello,
sorry.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me? My
Yes, Adrian.
mute. Thank you. Good morning.
Oh.
Thank you for this because I've wondered. I know we voted on this and talked about it as a committee, and I know that there are state constraints perhaps, but it looks like that an employee could be eligible for 5.5% total with the cost of living and I guess the state increase. Is that correct? It's an and.
Spot on,
Yeah.
Adrian.
Okay. All right, that has not, and it's probably me, so I apologize, but that has not been clear, and often in these meetings, I've questioned, why it seemed the bar was set a little lower, so I'm happy to now understand that. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. No problem. So, what I was going to say along those lines with CBAC, which, by the way, if you don't know, stands for State Employees Bargaining Agent Coalition. And that's the coalition of unions that represent state employees. And so, so they negotiate with the state on behalf of the state. On behalf of the unions with the on behalf of the unions with the state. And so the one part of that I want to mention is that contract does end the existing contract does end on June 30th of this year. It's being negotiated for future years now. So we're assuming that the same increases that have been in place for the past at least 4 or 5 fiscal years since I've been around will be in place again once the new contract is finalized. If there's anything different than that, we'll obviously let everybody know and adjust the budget as necessary. But for now, we expect it to be as it's been. Moving on to benefit rates, we have a 76% fringe benefit rate. 24% of that is for healthcare. That's based on historical trends, and 52% is for the pension obligation. Right now, the pension obligation is about 47.5%. We have reached out to the Office of the State Controller for guidance on what the rate will be next fiscal year. They've indicated it will be, and this isn't final yet, but they've indicated they expect it to be at least 50%. So we ratcheted it up a couple of percent just to be conservative, again, because it's not final. Another significant expense is outreach expense, which includes the CIC initiative for the entire year. You may remember we started it in the middle of this fiscal year. So next fiscal year, it'll be for the whole year. And we've also budgeted some additional vendors beyond the 7 we have now. And there's also a price increase budgeted in there for what as well for what what's expected. There's also IT support expenses, and that includes typical work such as platform work, claims analysis, security, continued fund recovery work, website maintenance, and all that good stuff. I just wanted to spend a few minutes comparing the current budget, which is the first column on the left, to last year's budget, which is the middle column, and our most recent projection for the current year fiscal year. I'm not going to go over every line on this like I did with the Finance Committee, but I do want to hit the high points. Regarding revenue up at the top, you'll see if you look at the middle gray column, our revenue is about $3.6 million less than last year's budget. Again, that's because we dropped down the administrative fee from 20 to 16. If you look down all the way at the bottom, you'll see our expenses are budgeted at $1.6 million less than they were in last year's budget. And the significant items that contributed to that are one, IT consultant services, and that's because we used more bond funds and were able to use more bond funds because they were for necessary system enhancements. So we didn't have to use operating funds. So we expect to do the same thing in the fiscal 26 budget. So that's why the number is $1.2 million lower. That's number one. Number two, software licenses are lower by just under $400,000 because we got better pricing on our Salesforce license. And because of all the enhancements we made to fund recovery, we don't need an outside system license anymore. So that's not in the budget anymore. That's number two. Number three, our pension expense is expected to be lower because last year we had budgeted at 60% because that was based on what the historical trend was. And the coming fiscal year, we budgeted at 52%. So that's a significant drop. All the other decreases are basically based on historical trends. And the largest significant increase we have is in payroll, and that's because there's more salary positions. Well, there's one more salary position. We will have 49 full-time equivalents in the fiscal year 26 budget. There was one less in last year's budget. And there's also the pay adjustments and increases that I talked about before, the ones that Adrian asked about. So those are in the budget as well. Moving on to the right side of the page, you'll see down at the right-hand corner that you'll see the number $2.7 million. That means the fiscal year 2026 budget will be $2.7 million more than what we expect fiscal year 2025 expenses to be. And the significant reasons for that are, quite frankly, similar to what I just said. Number one, IT consultant services. It will be more than the fiscal 25 budget, and that's because we expect to use more money from the operating budget than we did last year, though certainly not nearly as much as we thought we would use the year before. So that's $444,000 of it. Number two, the pension rate, as I mentioned before, will be going up from about 47.5% to 52%. So that's $629,000 of the increase. Payroll and benefits will also go up because we have about 45 FTEs, or we expect to have them by the end of the fiscal year, and that will increase by 4. And there's the salary positions so that's the salary position part. And then there's the salary adjustments that I discussed. And then outreach and engagement will also be higher by $311,000, again, for the CECI program that we will have for the whole year and expect to have more vendors and a price increase. The one other thing I do want to mention on this page is the contingency. We have a contingency expense of $100,000 in the current year. That's for what we don't know what we don't know. So we like to have a contingency. And as always, if it's more than $5,000, we always let the board know what that item is and how we would move money from the contingency to the appropriate line. We've done that in the past, not for any particularly large amounts. So historically, we always budgeted at $250,000 and we ratcheted that down to $100,000 this year. I know that was a lot, but I just wanted to be somewhat thorough in helping the board understand where the budget comes from and what the changes were to the current fiscal year. So I appreciate everybody joining me and walking me through with that. Okay, we're going to move on to the bond budget. The bond budget has total bonds authorized of $50 million. Now, currently in the Legislative Finance Committee of the state, they have included language in the latest bond bill to reduce that total authorized amount from $50 million to $26 million. If and when that passes, we'll let everybody know. That effectively gives us $10 million more of bond money to use if we need it, which they did talked to us about, and we did let them know and work with them to come up with that number. And that's the bond money that we expect we would need in the next few years. If we did need more bond money authorized, we could go to the state and ask for more, but that's what we expect for the next few years. As of right now, of that 50 authorized, we've had $16 million allocated. We've used 15 of it, or we expect to use 15 of it by the end of the fiscal year, the end of next month. So we'll have about $1 million left over, and we expect to use $500,000 of that in fiscal year 26. And that'll be used for necessary continued system enhancements to the employee contribution platform, including fund recovery, website enhancements, security enhancements, and things of that nature. Moving on to the contribution budget. So
Dave-
yes.
Oh, sorry, Dave. I have one question. Holly, I'm sorry. I couldn't find the raise hand.
Oh, no worries,
button
Holly.
Again on Zoom. I'm so sorry to interrupt. Just to reiterate on the bond budget, the authority itself is responsible for the debt service on any bonds issued on behalf of the authority.
That is
Yes,
correct.
Correct? Okay.
absolutely.
That was it. I just wanted to say that kind of here in this space for the benefit of the board, that even though the state issues them, that the authority is pays the debt service.
That's right. Which actually leads me to my next slide, Holly. So thank you for the
Perfect
intro.
segue.
Holly, fantastic. Thank you. So as Holly pointed out, we're going to start at the bottom for one item. As Holly pointed out, the authority is responsible for that debt service. So if you look down at the bottom, you'll see just under $2 million for a bond repayment. And that will be our fourth out of 10 bond repayments. And we'll get into the details of that on the next slide. But yes, absolutely. The authority does pay back the bonds, and it does come out of the contribution budget. So what other expenditures do come out of the bond budget? Claims and benefit payments, perhaps obvious. That's our most significant one. We've budgeted $475.3 million. The administrative fee for claims and benefits administration, obviously, that is at $25 million. The administrative fee for the paid leave authority is at $16 million. And where is the money coming from to fund these expenditures? The biggest one is the payroll contributions of $490.2 million, fund recovery contributions and interest of $2.7 million, investment income of $23.3 million, and as I mentioned earlier, there is a redesignation of operating reserves of $14.2 million that will be coming into the contribution budget. So all that together means a $12.2 million increase to the contribution budget, which is budgeted and expected to be at $597.8 million by the end of fiscal year June 30, 2026. Okay, assumptions behind these numbers. So we do work with our actuaries spring for the much larger numbers of this budget. So that would include payroll contributions, and working with them, we have determined that a 4% salary growth number is appropriate, as well as projected changes in unemployment that somewhat temper down that number. Also, fund recovery, as I mentioned before, that's based on historic collections. Investment income of $23.3 billion. We have budgeted 4.1% for a rate. That rate comes from the Office of Policy and Management. They provide guidance for what they think the rate will be. And so we work with them to determine this rate. We are currently earning 4.4%. So we do expect that rate to go down during the next fiscal year. As far as assumptions for expenses, benefit claim payments are based on the most recent actuarial projection for fiscal year 25, quarter 2 for the quarter, based on the report from spring, and that has an increased assumed incident rate of 4.7%. As you may remember, back in December of 2024, we updated all our assumptions because of the increased activity we were seeing. So the most recent budget is based on those updated assumptions. The benefit administrative fee that we currently pay to Aflac is based on historic cost and also allows for a price increase on January 1st. It's also based on an RFP response that is still being subject to negotiation for the contract. So that has also been worked into the benefit administrative fee as well. The Connecticut paid leave administrative fee is the same as the operating budget number. It better be. That's $16 million. And as Holly mentioned before, the bond repayment is paid by the authority. That is the total amount of $16 million. It's paid annually in June at an interest rate of 3.5%. The interest is determined semi-annually, but the payment is made annually. And that's 10 years, and this will be the 4th of the 10 years. Just some quick highlights of where the current budget compares to the last one. Contributions of $490 million compared to last year's budget of $464. That's about a $25.8 million increase. And again, that's attributed to salary growth. The investment income is a little lower by $400,000. The interest rate is about the same because last year it was 4%. But there's also been an increase in the fund balance. So that helps with the increase. That helps with the investment income this year. But we thought there was going to be a bigger increase in last year's budget. But as you remember, the benefit payments came in higher than expected. So year to year, that attributes to why the investment income is slightly lower. Moving on to the expenses compared to last year's budget. Again, the $96.1 million increase in benefits shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody, as we've had more usage of the plan, and there's been more claimants and there's been more activity. So good news is people are using the plan as intended. So that's why the number is higher. The administrative fee is $4 million lower. And again, that's because we ratcheted down. And compared to the right-hand side on the projection, again, it's the same thing. Contributions are up because of salary growth. Investment income is down, will be down compared to where we are now, because we started this current fiscal year earning 5.4% on our short-term investment fund. It's gone down to 4.4%. And in next fiscal year, we expect it to go down further to 4.1%. So that's the main driver why there's decrease in investment income. The benefit payments up by 28.8. Again, that we expect to be some more usage due in part to the higher incident rate, and the administrative fees will be slightly higher at $1 million. So what do we do today? So I will answer any questions any of the board members have regarding the budget, and we will ask for a vote to approve today. If the board feels that there's more time needed, we could ask the board to schedule a special meeting on or before May 31st, as that's when the budget is due, or we can wait until the next regularly scheduled meeting on June 12th, and the board could vote to do that as well. But at this point, I'm happy to take any questions that the board may have regarding the budget.
We just make a motion to approve right now.
That works for me. Thanks so much, John. I see that you're boarding the airplane there. Motion to approve. Do we have a second?
A second.
Any in opposition? And any abstentions?
We do need anyone.
All in favor.
We- You
Oh,
skipped
all
over
in favor.
Thank you.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, the motion carries. Thank you so much, and thank you, Dave, for that very thorough update. Appreciate that.
Thank you very much. Appreciate everyone's time and attention on that.
Sorry, just to make sure we have belt and suspenders, I heard a lot of approves. I just want to, could we just ask for an opposition just in case anyone was waiting?
Sure, all opposed?
Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Next up, we have Michael. Michael, can you please lead us in discussion regarding?
Before we go
proposed
on to that, I do
amendments?
have to sign on, because I can't really stay on an airplane. But this will be my last meeting. I announced my resignation will be effective the 15th of this month. So I just wanted to say thank you to everybody and wish everybody the best.
Thank you, John. Best to you.
Thank you, John. Wishing you all the best and safe flight today.
Thank you.
Travels.
John, I was
Bye,
going to say
everybody.
very nice things about you in my CEO report. So,
Well, say it
so
anyway.
check
and
out
then
the check out the
record it.
video.
All right, I will. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
All right. Any other comments? Are we ready to move on to the next item? Okay, thanks. Michael, will you please lead us in discussion regarding proposed amendments to consolidated policies to post for public comment?
Absolutely. Thank you, Eleanor, and good morning, everybody. I'm going to share my screen.
Can see your screen, Michael.
Thank you, Stephanie. Hopefully the board all received the red line version of the recommended revisions to the consolidated policies. Nothing too controversial in here, no major changes to our program. I can talk about any of the specific details if the board wishes, but I was going to just basically talk about it at a high level for now. I broke it down to 6 different categories as far as what we're intending to do with these revisions. The first category is probably the most impactful from a word count perspective, but the least impactful from actually changing our program, because the goal is essentially to merge 2 definition lists into one. Folks who were on the board at the very start of the program may recall that one of the first actions the board took was to adopt a glossary of terms. These are primarily definitions from FMLA statutes, regulations, guidance, DOL letters, and things of that nature, essentially saying how FMLA works, and the board voted to adopt those same definitions for Connecticut paid leave. A little while later, we also created the consolidated policies document with its own list of definitions in them. So we sort of had these 2 lists for a while. With the change to our program, the inclusion of sexual assault leave in the category of safe leave, we did want to make a change to the glossary. So rather than changing that additional list, we thought this is a good opportunity to basically combine the 2 into one. So you have one spot that's hopefully more useful for the public should they want to look up the definition related to our program. So a lot of this work is just taking the glossary definitions and moving them into the consolidated policies. And then hopefully we can retire that glossary at some point. Second category of changes that we're recommending, very small change. Regional educational service centers and charter schools currently have the same participation requirements as local or regional boards of education. So they start out exempt from the program. However, they are able to opt into the program via collective bargaining agreement should there be any collective bargaining units at this RESC or charter school. So we want to make sure in our policies that we emphasize that that's also allowed for them to opt in, just the same way that the local and regional boards of education can. As far as the third item, this relates to contributions and the limit on contributions above the Social Security cap. In most circumstances, when an employee changes from one employer to another employer in the middle of a year, that second employer basically starts their contribution amount back at 0 when thinking about the cap. And this is both for how it works under FICA as well as how it works under Connecticut paid leave. So that second employer has no idea how much was paid to that employee under the first employer, so they don't know to stop contributing once they exceed that Social Security cap. That employee then would be able to, at the end of the year, submit a request for a refund, both from us as well as from the IRS for FICA purposes. So ultimately, it's just a matter of when the money comes in, and at the end of the day, it's a net same for that employee. So that's how it works for most circumstances. The IRS does have one rule that applies to circumstances where there really isn't a change in employers. While there technically is, the employee really hasn't moved. So think about where there's an employer who restructures or an employer's acquired or merges with another entity and forms a new entity, that employee really hasn't changed jobs, and that new employer is essentially the same as the old employer, but on paper it is different. The IRS allows for FICA purposes that second employer to consider the earnings paid under that first employer. It's really helpful for employers under FICA because they can avoid the employer portion of the contribution. But really for us, it's not a big deal for us. It really just avoids the requirement that employees submit a refund request at the end of the year. So essentially, we're going to adopt the same rule as the IRS does, that employer can consider the earnings paid under the prior employer if they qualify as a successor employer. Hopefully that made sense. Fourth item is about claim documentation. This is just confirming that we are allowed to accept claim documentation in writing, electronically, or verbally at our discretion. This is incredibly helpful when it comes to pregnancy claims because our standard process is to allow the claimant to have to give permission to the case manager to reach out directly to the healthcare provider and confirm details about that pregnancy rather than requiring a MedCert form itself. So we found it to be very helpful. The pregnancy claims are operating much more efficiently that way. So we wanted to make it clear in our policies that we have the right to do so. This also can be helpful in the case of incomplete documentation. Rather than requiring the employer or healthcare provider to fill in details and send us another form, we could potentially reach out to that individual and ask them to complete the details over the phone. So make the process a lot smoother for employees. The fifth category is not a massive change to our policies, but it's probably the biggest change to employers, or at least the most helpful change to employers related to this effort. In the spring, we recently launched the opportunity for employers to be granted access to a limited amount of information about employees' claims. So if a claim is approved or denied, what the dates of that approval, if applicable, and what the amount of payments are, is now available through the employer portal, the same portal that they use to remit contributions to us. And this information is not anything new that they have. They previously were getting this information in a letter that was sent to the date of the approval or the date of the denial. This is just another option for them to see it, so they don't have to hold on to that letter forever. They can just go to the portal at any time and see what recent claims decisions were made. All employers officially have access to this, but they would not automatically get it once they're registered. Instead, there's a process we asked them to go through. We essentially want to make sure that the right person at the employer's entity is the one who sees access to this information. It's not a tremendous amount of personal information. For example, we don't give any information about the condition. We don't give any of the documents or files that were submitted on the claim. It's just a sort of high level information, but it is a little bit more sensitive than what they had before. So we do want to make sure that it's the right person getting that access. And therefore, in order to be granted access, the employer must submit a request via the Contact Us process, select employer only claim access. A form will be sent to them and we'll ask for them to confirm details about prior wage reporting. We felt like that was a useful guide to ensure that the right people are getting access. Once they complete that form, send it back to us, we'll grant them the access and they'll be able to see it in their portal. We have been a little bit quiet about this program or this option being available. There's sort of two reasons for that. One, we wanted to make sure we weren't inundated with hundreds of thousands of requests for access all at the same time, because that would be hard for us to work through and not a good experience for employers. But also this sort of slow access has been helpful in figuring out what's working for it and what sort of changes we can make to the process. So the initial requests that came in were folks who found it sort of naturally when they went into the portal, and now we have it on our website as well, details about the access, but we have not issued a press release or newsletters or anything like that yet. So that sort of initial requests that came in have been helpful. Process is working relatively smoothly so far, and we hope it keeps up. The last item on the list is third-party authorization. This is allowing circumstances for a third party to effectively step in the shoes of the employee when filing a claim, whether that's the initial filing or completing the claim if the employee becomes incapacitated. There's a few options available in the policy. One option is the third-party authorization form. This has always been available to folks, so just reiterating that that's an option. We also allow, if there's a court appointment of legal guardianship, that can allow a third party to act on behalf of the claimant. If there's a power of attorney, in the case of the death of the claimant, if they are owed benefits prior to the death, the executor can sort of complete the claim on their behalf. And then there's sort of a catch-all provision related to healthcare provider certification. If they indicate that the claimant's unable to either file the claim or complete the claim, and is unable to complete the third-party authorization form because of a medical condition, that could be a reason to grant power to that third party. No matter what the circumstances are, we do not allow that third party to ever receive the claim benefits themselves. Payments can only be made to the claimant, or if the claimant passes away, to the claimant's estate. So I went through that really fast. Happy to talk about any details if the board would like. And hopefully at the end of the day today, we'll have a vote to at least post these for notice and comment with the public.
Great. Thank you so much, Michael. Really appreciate that. Are there any comments or questions? Okay. Seeing none, may I have a motion to authorize the authority to post the notice about the proposed amendments to the consolidated policies for public comment?
So moved. So moved. Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And any abstentions? Okay, thank you so much. Thanks again, Michael, for that update. The motion carries.
Thank you.
And appreciate that. Next, we have John. John, would you please provide us with the claims update?
Okay, thank you, Eleanor. Let me share my screen. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
You can see your
Okay.
screen, John.
Great, thank you. Okay, so I have a brief overview of claims administration for April 2025 and a year-over-year 2024 to 2025 data comparison for you. The 3-month claims filed trend is 25,668 claims received with a monthly moving average of 8,556. This is a year-over-year increase in claims filed of 11.15% compared to the February to April 2024 period. April 2025 year-over-year claim volume is 6.19% higher than April 2024. Year-over-year claims filed shows program growth with an increase of 9,426 claims. This represents a 9.17% growth rate in claims filed year-over-year from 23 to 24 and from 24 to 25. The data presented includes 12,072 pregnancy cases with bonding as a second reason from the 23 to 24 year, and 11,381 pregnancy cases with bonding as a second reason from the May to April 2024 to 2025 time period. Bear with me for a sec as my notes just froze. Okay, this slide illustrates the 12-month claim by leave reason and percentage of claims filed by gender statistical trends. The categories represented in the bar chart are the 4 largest leave reasons totaling 99.41% of claims filed. Other leave categories are in the chart on the right and total a little more than 0.5% of total claims filed. The bonding data presented includes 11,381 cases representing the bonding segment of pregnancy cases filed. And this slide highlights the reporting impact of the successful customer service improvements made in streamlining pregnancy and bonding cases into one case. Cases filed are shown in blue, and the associated bonding segment of pregnancy cases filed are shown in orange. The reporting of these incremental bonding cases more accurately demonstrate program growth and represent an 11.29% increase in cases filed in the 12-month period ended April 30th, 2025. Counting the bonding segment of pregnancy cases as separate cases provide a level playing field to compare year-over-year claim statistics and when comparing the Connecticut paid leave program to other state
So you
leave.
want to cut them when you cut, you want to cut it as close to the main branch as possible. You want to cut like here.
Oh,
You know what I mean? Not in the middle, because then you have
Amy
a
Parker, if you
slice.
could
It
please
looks
mute
stupid.
yourself. Thank you. Thanks, John. Please proceed.
John, I think I accidentally muted you. So you'll have to unmute yourself.
Okay,
There we
thanks.
go. Sorry about that.
That's okay. I'll just take a step back to the prior comment here. The reporting of these incremental bonding cases more accurately demonstrate program growth and represent an 11.29% increase in cases filed in the 12-month period ended April 30th, 2025. Counting the bonding segment of pregnancy cases as a separate case provides a level playing field to compare year-over-year claim statistics and when comparing the Connecticut paid leave program to other state paid leave programs that count these cases separately. And for adjudicated claim status, the year-over-year adjudicated claims show a 2.75% approval rate increase from 2023 to 2024. When adding the bonding segment of pregnancy cases, approved claims rise to over 80,000 and the approval rate rises an additional 2.74% to 80.37%. The denial rate drops to 19.63%. At the bottom here, the 6-month November 24 through April 25 period totaling 35,552 approvals has an approval rate of 79.38%. And when including the bonding segment of pregnancy cases, approved claims increase to 40,679 and the approval rate increases to 81.5%. And on the race and ethnicity data was collected on an opt-in basis beginning in August of 2023. The data reported are cumulative statistics from August 2023 through April of 2025. The opt-in response rate for race and ethnicity is 33% and 32% respectively. And approval and denial rates are relatively consistent with overall program rates, although there are a couple of categories that have lower approval rates. To the extent those differences are not skewed by low response rates, we think additional outreach efforts in 2025 by the community education coordinators may help to improve some of those approval percentages. And looking at the weekly payments trend line graph, it shows significant weekly payment growth to an average of $8.57 million per week paid over the last 26 weeks. The trend is being driven by 3 components: a year-over-year increase in claims filed of 9.17%, an increase in the approval rate of 5.49%, and 2 increases in weekly benefit rates tied to minimum wage increases. These minimum wage increases compound to a 9.26% increase in weekly benefit rates. Some lower weekly payment data in December of 2024 and January of 2025, the dip on the chart here to the right, reflect seasonality in claims filed we have consistently seen over the last 3 years with leaves taken in November and December, and thus the lower payments in December and January. And on this slide, the approved insight slide, number of unique employees paid by Connecticut Paid Leave has risen to almost 158,000. And the total amount the program has paid to Connecticut workers is now over $1.15 billion. 2024 total payments increased by 22.58% compared to 2023. And year over year, year-to-date payments for 2025 are up by 15.42%. Average weekly payments over the last 26 weeks, again, have risen to $8.57 million per week, and all payment metrics show significant growth from 23 to 24 and 24 to 25. And this slide illustrates some of the call metrics that Aflac reports to us, and call center metrics show the average number of monthly calls into the call center over the last 12 months was 30,400 calls per month. 89% of these calls were answered in 30 seconds or less. And while year-over-year claim volume was up over 6% in April, call volume for April of 25 was down by 9%. Claimant call types received by type of customer service skill set were 62% for existing claim service, 30% for new claims, and 8% for payment inquiries. And this slide illustrates customers' electronic filing portal usage and electronic communication. Online claim filing has steadily increased. It was over the last 12 to 18 months, somewhere in the vicinity of 66% or so, and has steadily increased now to 74% of claims filed. Opt-in for email and text messaging is very high at 85% and 82% respectively. Portal messaging is also a highly utilized mode of communicating for claimants who prefer the ease of messaging electronically with their case manager. And lastly, there are a couple of screenshots here that I took. IT has recently deployed employer-employee claims access data for employers on the Connecticut Paid Leave website. This slide image mockup, this is just mockup data from a fictitious company, but the mockup illustrates the employer list view of their employee claims over the most recent 12 months. And employers are now able to register their authorized employees, as Michael talked about, benefit administrators to obtain access to employee level claim data, leave information, including leave reason, leave type, leave dates, claim status, and also any payments made on individual claims. And then lastly, on this screen, this image illustrates the employer view of an individual claim and the related claim payments for that particular claim. And that concludes the claims presentation. Any questions?
Thank you so much, John. This has really been very fascinating. I'm just curious, it looks like the claims have continued to increase year over year. Do we have any expectation for when they might level off, or is it too soon to say on that front?
That's an excellent question. We are certainly monitoring that very closely and keeping an eye on those trends. The growth has been pretty substantial over the last year and a half or so, and we're looking to see when that levels out. Actuaries are certainly providing us some input on that as well, but the growth rate has been fairly substantial.
Just, Molly, I see your hand, but just to add to what John is saying, it's the answer to the question is complicated by the fact that sort of paid leave in the modern iteration of paid leave is new, and the data was complicated by the insertion of the pandemic into everybody's lives. So we know that the legacy states, the states that had an existing temporary disability insurance program, that then expanded into including a family and caregiver benefits, had about a 8 to 10 year ramp up. But the more modern states had a much faster launch. So, Washington, Massachusetts, and Connecticut all hit higher numbers much sooner than the legacy states. So we anticipate that we will hit maturity sooner than the legacy states. And so we anticipate hitting maturity sooner than 9 to 10 years, but the pandemic also had even those legacy states see large increases. So we're all just monitoring what we see, what the other states are seeing, and kind of what is being reported on the FMLA side, which is also not incredibly complete data, but useful. So we think it's going to be less than 10 years. It's going to be more than 5 is sort of where we are right now.
Gotcha. Thank you so much.
Hi,
Molly?
Molly.
Hey. First, I just wanted to say thank you for including the breakdown by purpose by gender. I think that's really helpful in contextualizing how to understand who's using what benefits. Also, I'm fascinated by the fact that bonding leave seems to be the closest to gender parity, but that's a data analysis question for another time. I was also going to just say, just for context, in terms of what sort of steady state usage might look like if we accomplish all of our goals. The best data set we have, which is the federal FMLA survey, estimates that 15% of employees have used leave for an FMLA type reason in the last 12 months. Plus, there's about another 7% who had some kind of unmet need. There is no program in the country that is doing anything close to 15% of employees are making a claim every year. But like, I think as we contextualize, also Things Connecticut is doing better than other programs, particularly on a lot of the outreach and education. Like, I think we should be thinking in terms of what is likely from an actuarial perspective, but also what the goal is. And what the goal is way higher than what is actuarially likely. And I think the authority is doing a great job in planning accordingly. I think seeing this growth is great. I think it is a sign that lots of things the authority is doing is working, as well as we know there's more work to do. But we got miles to go before we sleep on getting to all Connecticut workers who qualify for this program are taking when they need to. But I think that is in the spirit of the question and in the spirit of the presentation.
That's great. Thank you, Molly, for that context. It's really helpful. Any other questions?
I just have one follow-up question, Holly, for John. I don't recall in the spring report what the actuarial assumption was for claims growth, but I feel like the 9.1% year over year exceeds what was in the last actuarial report. And if you can't confirm that now, that's okay. But I think this growth is greater than what had been assumed previously. So we would have to account for that in our next, the next actuarial analysis. I don't know. Can you confirm that for me?
Well, so I think I would make a couple of points here that I think we may be talking a little bit about apples and oranges, as I believe that the actuaries use incidence rate, and then the statistics that I'm displaying here are claims filed and not claims approved. So the actuaries kind of live in the claims approved area, and looking at that against the potential pool of folks that are eligible for benefits. I think that's where they're coming up with that that incidence rate. So they're kind of two different numbers, and the numbers that I'm illustrating here are the claims filed.
Okay, that's helpful. But from what the actuaries assume from an incident rate, what's the delta between the claims filed and those that actually end up going on to be approved?
So approval rates have been increasing, and at this point, we're in the low 80s for approval rates on claims overall that are filed.
Okay, that's helpful. But suffice to say that we've seen significant growth in both claims filed and claims approved. And so we'll have to monitor that when we continue to have discussions with regards to our fund balance. And the latest, going back to kind of our initial task on this meeting, the latest budget that was adopted does assume growth in incidents. So I'm just trying to kind of like
Yes.
bring together all the frayed pieces. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. That's
Correct.
helpful.
And
So
I think I was just going to say one other point that I would make. In the annual report, there's also information about the approved level of claims, et cetera, in addition to the claims filed.
So Holly, and just as a reminder for everybody, we have the actuaries do sort of their annual estimate in the summer to sort of anticipate what we expect to see this past year, because claims were increasing quite noticeably. We had them rerun their analysis, redo their estimates in December. And so at the next board meeting and the next finance meeting, you'll be seeing the next quarterly update from the actuaries to talk about this third quarter fiscal year, and what we're seeing. And then they are already sort of planning for their yearly report, which will have sort of what they anticipate for next year. So we watch it very closely. These numbers keep us all up at night because it's good and we're successful, and the people who need the benefits are getting the benefits. So those are all really good things, but we just are watching very closely to make sure that the money is there. And as Dave pointed out, you know, we are in a good place, and we have those operating reserves, which enable us to have next year's budget net out at zero. But as we've been talking about for several months now, expenses due to benefit claims are increasing. And so they are exceeding revenue. We have that lovely reserve that will not last forever. And so we're just watching it all very, very closely.
That's helpful. And also with regards to, you know, paying on future claims, Dave mentioned it, but we've been in a time of historic rate of return on our invested funds. And I know that we've seen some dampening in that, and we expect that moving forward, likely the short-term investment fund rate of return will probably at some point normalize back to historic rates, which were around 2%, I think. So that's helpful context. Thank you.
Molly.
Hi, Molly.
I'll be quick, I promise. I think just to Holly's point about thinking about what's going to happen with reserves, thinking about what's going to happen with claims increasing as we want them to. We've discussed this before, but it's, I think at this point, helpful to just note again, particularly for the public, that the only tools that the authority has are a rate that is capped at 0.5, which is where it is now, so we can't raise it anymore, or we can cut benefits. The legislature has many more tools than the authority has. And so as we think about, we know a lot more about what actually happens in Connecticut than we did when the law was written, because we hadn't done any of this before. And we know a lot more about paid leave generally. It seems worth raising again that if it does come to pass that the 0.5 rate, which we currently have and have had since contribution started, isn't enough indefinitely to pay for the awesome level of usage we have and the levels of usage we hope to see in the future, the only tool we as the authority have is to cut benefits. But the legislature has many more tools which they may wish to consider using.
Thank you, Molly.
Okay, thanks everyone.
All right. Thank you so much, John. Really appreciate the conversation on this topic. Moving on to committee reports. Mike, would you please provide the policy and personnel report?
Yes, good morning. The committee met last week and we discussed the proposed revisions to the consolidated policies, which Michael told us about earlier today. And our next meeting is in July. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, Mike. Molly, can you provide the outreach and engagement report?
Sure. We did not meet this month. We will meet next week.
Thank you, Molly. And Holly, can you provide the Finance and Audit Committee report, please?
Yes, the committee met at the end of April, and we discussed the proposed draft budget for the fiscal year 25-26, which was approved today by the board. We also received a review of the regularly reported financials, which Dave will walk us through today.
Thank you, Holly. There was quite a, thank you, Stephanie. So there's quite a bit of this we already covered when we were talking about the budget. So I won't reiterate all of that again. But as far as actual results through March of 2025, our results for the month were $1.1 million. That was $272,000 higher than budget. Typical expenses were spent for the month, no surprises there. Year to date, our activity has been $518,000. That is a negative variance of $1.1 million. But as you may remember, that's because we didn't transfer the $5 million of revenue. And so the offset to that has been a $3.6 million positive variance of expenses year to date. Regarding bond money, it was a typical month for spending on bonds, almost $99,000, which is almost spot on to what we have budgeted. And year to date, the bond money has a positive variance of $80,000. We do think we're going to be pretty close to what we budgeted for the year at $1.2 million. So far, we have over $1.5 million of bond money that's available. And we're continuing to spend that on fund recovery enhancements. Moving on to contribution activity, our net activity for the month was minus $34.3 million. That was over a negative $5.3 million variance, again, due to the benefits paid, which we just discussed during John's presentation. That comes to about $8.8 million a week in terms of what our spending is. John had mentioned over the last 26 weeks that it averaged to about $8.6 million. So we're seeing the higher end of that trend, which was as expected. Last month, it was about $8.5 million. That was February, and that was the tail end of the seasonality that John was discussing before. So we are seeing the number going back up to pre-seasonality levels. For the month of March, the contribution revenue was just under $500,000, almost to what we had budgeted, and everything else was better than budget. Year to date, our activity is just under a negative $700,000. That's a negative $28.4 million variance. Again, the largest reason that is happening is an increased amount in benefits paid than what we budgeted to like a year ago now. But everything else has a positive variance and is offsetting that. As I like to say, what does that all mean for the contribution fund? The contribution fund is at $565.3 million, so it's in a good place. And as Erin mentioned, next month, the actuaries will be coming with their quarterly update, and so we'll talk more about that then. Just a quick preview into April. Nothing really unexpected there. Operating expenses were just over $1 million. Benefits paid were just over $35.5 million. That equates to a spend rate of about $8.9 million a week. So we did see an increase in there in benefits being paid. It was also the month that most of the contribution revenue comes in, and that was over $141.5 million. That was the highest month we ever saw for contributions coming in, and we'll have more of an analysis for everybody next month when we talk about April and the quarter to date results. I'm not going to go over the projections in any length because we already did that during budgeting, but just to reiterate, we do expect the operating projection to come in at just under $1.5 million in activity. There's a negative variance of $419,000. Again, that's due in large part to the $5 million we didn't transfer, offset by a $4.3 million positive variance in expenses, which we expect to come in at $14.2 million. And the expectations for the contribution projection are a over $14.5 million positive effect to the contribution fund. And so we expect the fund to be at about $580 million by the end of the fiscal year. So that's where we are through March with a preview through April. I'm happy to take any questions at this time.
All right, any questions for Dave? Seeing none. Erin, could you please provide your CEO report?
Thank you so much, Eleanor. So the primary thing I wanted to do today was to thank John Scott for his service on the board. John has been the appointment from the House Minority Leader, Representative Candeloro. He's been on the board since inception and has been a very active and diligent member, serving as the secretary of the board, as well as serving on the Finance Committee. So I wanted to thank him for his service to the organization and for making sure that we thought through the contribution piece and made sure that we were always thinking about the daily impact of the contributions as well as the benefits associated with the program. So even though he is no longer in the meeting, I know he will check this out later, so I do want to convey my thanks to him. Representative Candeloro has advised us that his new appointment to the board starting next month will be Melissa Gibran, who is currently on staff at the legislature in the House Republican office as the budget leader. I'm sorry, I don't know your official title, is former state representative. Ms. Gibran has been a diligent public servant, and I just want to welcome her to the board. So we will see you officially next month. I want to thank the board members for complying with the statements of financial interest. We all had to submit those on May 1st, so thank you all for doing that. And just to point out that this is our budget season. It's legislative budget season, so even though we do not receive any funds from the legislature for the general fund, we are always paying attention to what's going on over there. There is legislation that would expand access to the program to employees of public and private schools whose positions do not require them to be certified. So teachers and administrators would remain excluded from the program if this proposed legislation that was introduced by the Labor Committee goes through. Non-certified staff and employees of private schools would become covered by the program. So we will see what happens there, and we'll report back to the board once the legislative session is over, which ends in 1 month. So gonna be a busy month for that. Happy to take any questions if anyone has any questions about what we've been doing, but we've been pretty thorough today in talking about a variety of different elements of our program. So I think you've got a good flavor of what's been going on.
All right, any questions for our CEO?
Looks like Ava.
Ava.
I don't have a question, but typically after our CEO goes, we adjourn. So I wanted to get a comment in before we adjourn with the announcement of John Scott. Wanted to go on the record and echo what Erin said. And for those who are newer to the board or those listening in, John Scott has been such an asset to this board, to this team. As Erin mentioned, he was one of the original board members, and we were in the muck together. You know, sometimes he and I and other board members, we didn't always see eye to eye, but he always challenged us to be the best stewards of this program, really making sure that we're steering the ship on a path to success. And here we are, you know, so many years later, doing great things as our staff team have presented. So I just wanted to give shout out to John Scott for all the hours, the commitment, the long days of figuring out when there was bare bones and literally no staff of saying, we're going to do this. It's going to be great. So John, you're awesome. So we're going to miss you.
Thank you so much, Ava. Any other comments at this time? All right, seeing none, yes. Thank you so much to John for your service. I didn't have much overlap time with you, but wish you all the best in your future endeavors, and welcome to Melissa Gibran. We look forward to serving on the board with you. Do we have any old business at this time? Seeing none, any new business? All right. That concludes our meeting for today then. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
And a
Second.
second? Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? And any abstentions? Seeing none, the motion carries. It is 10:17 a.m. and the meeting is adjourned. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great day and we'll see you next time.
Thank
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.